So if you haven't already guessed by now, I kind of like roguelites. Something about constantly progressing towards a goal, getting farther and farther, just feels super rewarding for me. I don't really care how the game looks or plays most of the time, as long as it's cut from that same cloth. 2D platformer, dungeon crawler, first-person shooter, really, I like a ton of them. But I can't make a video that's 3 hours long that personally serves to suck off my hyperfixations for every roguelite that I like. Some of them simply can't warrant a video on their own. So here's a ton of roguelites I thought were cool and that you should totally play before I hurt you. Now, I do love all types of roguelites, but there's always just been that one that's a turnoff for me. I don't think they have an official name, so I'm going to be calling them stick roguelites. Stick roguelites are games where your only option is solely moving around. Typically, the game will attack for you with whatever hodgepodge of weapons you have. Then it's all about killing waves of enemies until you die of starvation in real life or something. The game that really turned off this genre for me was Vampire Survivors. By far the most popular of this subgenre. It starts out pretty fun, but then after a while, you can literally just stand still and let the gameplay itself. I'm not saying I don't like the game, I'm just saying it's not for me, really. It just kind of felt boring to me. But I decided to give this type of game another shot with Brotato. And honestly, I'm glad I did, because I kind of got a little addicted to this game there for a minute. Brotato starts you playing as Brotato, and you fight aliens. Yeah, cool, plot synopsis over. Yeah, it's really not trying to be super in-depth with its story, and like, just look at it. Did you really think this is going to be The Last of Us Part 3? Of course it couldn't, because it hasn't been remade yet. And since I already said it's like Vampire Survivors, you could probably guess how it controls. The complexity comes from the weapons, stats, enemies, and characters. Let's go over all of them, because if I didn't, this segment would be like 4 minutes long. Starting off, there's your max HP stat, which I don't really think I'll need to explain, but healing back that HP when you lose it is our next stat. HP regeneration, the higher it is, will change at what speed you gain health back. Now you can heal regularly in the world just by chopping down trees that spawn and getting food from that, but you're not always going to be able to get to a tree in time to heal, so investing your levels into this isn't a bad idea. Lifesteal is a similar situation. When you kill an enemy, you get a little bit of health back. Just to repeat exactly what I said a second ago, and for why that's a good idea. The damage stat increases how much overall damage you do, with the melee damage, ranged damage, and elemental damage stats increasing how much oomph you can put behind those specific classes. Attack speed is also really self-explanatory. You just attack faster the higher the number is. Same with crit chance. You have a higher chance of dealing more damage. But our next stats are a little bit more complicated. Engineering will make structures you place down more powerful. This is the only main stat that can increase your tower power, so keep that in mind if you're going for some wacky-ass build. Range will make it to where projectiles can go and increase distance, and melee weapons will swing or stab farther. No matter what you're doing, this is a useful one to increase. Armor changes how much damage you'll take, dodge gives you a chance to not take that damage in the first place, and speed makes you move faster. How interesting. Luck will make it to where enemies will start dropping food, and also you'll find higher rarities of items in the shop. And finally, harvesting will give you more materials and XP at the end of a wave. Materials are these little green things that enemies drop. If you run into them yourself, you'll gain both XP and money. But if you don't grab one in time, don't worry, because it'll just be auto-collected and added to your overall cash. You won't gain XP that way, but it beats trying to run to the other side of the map to get it and risking death. Since we're at the end of a round now, let's talk about when a round ends. You'll obviously collect everything, like I just said, but if you get enough XP, you can level up. This just gives you a chance to increase any of those stats we went over, but this is also the place where you can use those coins you find at the store. You can get new weapons, items, the works. You can carry up to 6 weapons and an infinite amount of items, so take as much as you want. Items will typically increase one stat but bring down another, like giving you more defense but removing speed, more health but less automatic healing, a bunch of junk like that. But there are also upgrades that strictly help you, like placing landmines everywhere, spawning a bunch of turrets, spawning a turret every time you chop down a tree, turreting turrets, you name it. Now, items aren't the only thing that can give you buffs, weapons can as well. Like the wrench spawns, I really need to think of a better joke. The screwdriver spawns landmines, and not to mention the ghost weapons that can buff your stats every 20 kills you get. But what if you don't want to wait to get 20 kills? You can combine a weapon with the same weapon, as long as it's the same rarity, to increase their effects. But most of the time, just doing more damage or whatever their gimmick is. And finally, when you're done leveling up and choosing stuff from the store, you're thrown right back into the fray. Perfect time for me to talk about the enemies, I guess. We got small ones, tall ones, ones that can dash, ones that can smash, enemies that can buff, enemies that can shoot stuff, real big ones, and Craig. The enemies aren't all that interesting, just some standout ones that shoot projectiles, buff up other enemies. They're not that complex at all. But considering most of them die within 5 seconds, it's not that big of a deal. But after you've gone through 19 whole waves of malarkey, you can fight a boss on wave 20 and finish the run. Or more accurately, run away from the boss while screaming. Both are valid strategies. It either ends when the big palooka croaks or 90 seconds expire. Whichever is a better way of finishing the game is pretty much to whatever build you made. But however you finish that run doesn't really matter, because what you get for doing it are some pretty neato rewards. For starters, you can unlock a new difficulty, depending on which one you were on when you beat the game. It just adds new enemies and more difficulty. You can get new weapons for your next run, as well as items. Yes, very cool, moving on. But the best thing you can get is new characters. These will change up your starting stats at the start of a run to give you some wacky ass things to play with. The engineer gets more turrets and towers, the old man makes the room smaller, the bull is just weird, the multitasker can carry up to 12 weapons at a time. There's a lot of cool stuff you can mess around with. Brotato is definitely a simpler roguelite, but that doesn't mean it isn't fun. I mean, hell, it's so simple you can play the game with one hand, so I can play the game while writing an essay, or reading the Bible, or drinking water, and nothing else. Just some final notes before I wrap things up here. The soundtrack is nothing to note upon. It was so nothing, OBS refused to pick it up. Overall, Brotato is a pretty fun little roguelite. I mean, shit, for $5 you could do worse. It's cheaper than a damn Whopper. Just buy it, you know you want to. I can't think of a single good way to segue into this next game, so here's Window Kill. I could try to describe what its gimmick is, but like, look at it. Look at it. This is by far one of the coolest games I've ever played. This is genuinely insane. How did they program this? So if you haven't already guessed, the game takes place over multiple physical windows on your desktop. So you can move and shoot. That's really it. Somehow this already has more depth than the last game in terms of controls. Now your field of view is small, but shooting the sides of the screen can increase it. The reason you'll want to see farther is to avoid getting hit by enemies. The enemies are usually just basic shapes, hexagons, triangles, circles, really nothing crazy when it comes to character design. My favorite is the octagon. Triangles just move towards you, circles do it but in a fruity way, hexagons shoot at you and stay on the sides of the screen, little ghosts jump out at the floor. A shocking amount of variety for a game that looks like this. Similarly to Brotato, enemies will drop these little purple things you can collect and spend at a shop. Instead of there being waves, however, you can hit spacebar and access it whenever you want. You can get a variety of upgrades though, like increasing your rate of fire, giving you scatter shot, more health, typical roguelite stuff. What comes in to mix up the gameplay though are the bosses you can fight. I love this first one so much and how it works with the windows. It firing the waves from one side of the desktop that appears on the other is just so cool looking. The developer probably sold their soul to get this working. After you attack it, it'll try running away where you'll have to chase it. Repeat until it's dead. Pretty good boss all around. This next one is a big snake that kind of reminds me of the Anaconda from Enter the Gungeon. It's an orange snake that shoots bullets from its segments. So yes, exactly like that. But the difference is this one's individual bits can be destroyed, causing it to turn into a bunch of different snakes. Yet again, I keep saying it, but I love how the windows are being moved around like this. I am desperate for an Undertale fan game to do this with Flowey at some point. A lot more mobile than the last boss, but I like it. And the third boss
and go straight to hell.
This stupid thing and its stupid poison and its stupid mechanic where it breaks into more slimes and you kill it. This boss. And lastly, the final boss mostly. I love how it's literally just like you are an idiot virus face. Like who better to be the final boss of a game where everything is its own window, am I right? This one has a unique gimmick away from all of the other ones, where instead of trying to shoot directly at it, you'll have to physically take your mouse cursor and repeatedly trying to close the page, which is just so cool conceptually. Its only real attacks are just shrinking the area, but I would consider it drawing your eyes away from you and onto it to be its strongest attack. Probably the easiest boss, unfortunately, though. You don't really have to work your way over to it, you just spam click. So what do you get for defeating the bosses? You get these little sparks you can use in exchange for cool or permanent upgrades. Peer will let you see anywhere within its own little window. Drain will create a little box, and any enemy who goes in there will take procedural damage. And Bellow will make the window expand greatly if you right click. I would argue that Bellow is probably the best one, but if you upgrade it enough, Drain is probably better. Yeah, you can upgrade these as well. Drain's box gets bigger, you get an additional Bellow, plus a shockwave effect to it, and I don't know what happens when you upgrade Peer because that one kind of sucks. Just stick with upgrading the other two and ignore Peer. Now, if getting the regular upgrades ever becomes too much, you can always use your sparks to get one through manifestation. Cool, I guess. I only ever used this when I needed to heal on the fly. And after defeating the smiley face guy, that's really it. It just keeps throwing endless amounts of enemies and bosses at you until you die. You can unlock new characters, which I guess is cool. There's one with a melee and one that shoots lasers. Cool, I guess, but again, outside of all that, there are some cool unlockables, like a timed mode that automatically ends after 20 minutes, or changeable backgrounds and music. How riveting. Overall, the game is pretty fun. For the first few times. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, after a little bit, the novelty kind of wears off. And when you look past the cool gimmick, the game really just isn't all that good. The enemy spam is outrageous, you have like no invincibility frames, the only way to heal is by buying health, which is very inconsistent. But I'm going to be real, if you came to this game expecting some high-class art of an experience, then I'm sorry man, but I don't know what you were expecting. Is this a good game? No. Is this a good experience? Oh, hell yes. This review really cannot do it justice. Go out and play this game. It needs to be experienced. All of the crazy ways it messes with your windows on your desktop is something you need to see happening. It's the same price of Brotato at $5, and honestly, I would say Brotato is definitely more worth it, but it's literally $5, man. Come on. Give it a shot. What's stopping you? Affording a Whopper? Alright, so you might have known those last two games, but I wanted to really dig deep for a roguelite I haven't seen anybody talk about before. And I think I found that with Metavaxx. Basically, the opposite of Plague Inc. In Metavaxx, you'll be making a vaccine to stop the spread of a worldwide outbreak. I wonder if this is in reference to something from real life. First step is naming your vaccine, and I had to honor 2014 Let's Plays, so I named my vaccine Ligma. And you're off to the screen, which would be your strange-looking hub. There are little percentages next to every section that determine how many of the cells in that area are infected, and depending on how big the square is will change how big the level you go into is. To explain those things, let's talk about how the game plays. And the best way I can describe it is crossing Minesweeper with a bullet hell somehow, and making it work. These numbers on the purple background here will determine how many infected spaces are touching it. So let's say 3 cells are touching a purple space, and that purple space has a number 1 on it. That means one of them is infected. It's then up to you to determine which out of those 3 is infected, usually by looking at the other purple spaces around it to narrow it down. So if a purple space is the only thing touching it and it says a 1 on it, it's probably no good and best to avoid it. Or alternatively, let's say you're not about that actually doing math and planning life and you just want to shoot stuff. Well, that's a completely valid option too. Just start shooting stuff and viruses will surely follow. There's a ton of different germs that can pop out when you shoot an infected space. Some that explode into poisonous clouds, some that shoot bubbles at you, some that are invincible for a little bit, etc. because I forgot the rest. However you choose to virus bust doesn't really matter as long as you take out all of the ones that aren't infected. Really, the gameplay is as simple as moving and shooting, almost exactly how Window Kill played, but this time you're faster and the screen loops. The looping screen is honestly a really nice touch. It makes it way easier to keep track of what's actually going on, even if enemies can sometimes loop around and get you when you're not expecting it. After you clear through a level, a bar at the bottom will go up until your next big upgrade. When it's full, you can upgrade your vaccine to remove some side effects of it. Make the cost go down, make it more effective. I figured your entire face going puffy when you take it was probably bad, so remove that one right off the bat. Now the reason you'd want the cost to go down is because the other upgrades make it go up. When you finish a level, you'll have the ability to evolve your little player thing to be more advanced. The better upgrades typically making your vaccine cost more money. You can get more health, a better blaster, or a one-off upgrade like being able to mark specific blocks, which I assure you was very handy. A solid bunch of upgrades you can choose from. Now you can always skip an evolution if you don't want your cost to go up too high. Now why should I keep my vaccine price down? Why not take a page from Martin Shkreli's book and make life-saving medicine $5 trillion? Well, that's all because of when you ship the vaccine. Whenever you think you're ready to end a run, you can end it at any time by starting production. You'll be given a screen showing different areas of the world where it was effective, how many casualties happened, and how many people are actually able to get their hands on it, which changes based off the price. So all of this is pretty much just leading up to trying to get a better score. And then the game's over. You can repeat if you want, but you probably won't. I would say it's a very fun game, but just not as replayable as a ton of other roguelikes. This is the only roguelike that's in this video, not roguelite. If you don't know the difference, roguelites, you can constantly get progression towards some kind of big goal. Like you can unlock new things for your next run, and roguelikes just have to be the same thing every time. But back to Metavaxx, and I have a lot of compliments to give it. It looks really nice, like insanely so. Genuinely one of the most visually distinct games I've ever played. There's only like 2 music tracks, but it's a good kind of theme when you're trying to put all of your brain power behind something. And conceptually, like when was the last time you played a vaccine-based roguelike? And on the complaints side, I don't really have any, except it doesn't really mix up the gameplay enough for me. I mean, if you love Minesweeper, then you're going to enjoy it. But if you don't want to play Minesweeper for 2 hours to do a full run, then maybe save your $6. Seriously, it's cheaper than a Whopper, just buy it. I give Metavaxx 3 out of 5 Whopper jokes. And finally, for our last 2 games, I'm going to ask all of you to slide on your 3D glasses underneath your seat because these final 2 are VR. There's nothing bad that can come from this course of action. So, Compound is a neat game I found recently, and is genuinely one of my favorite first-person shooters I've played. I mean, it would be hard for it to be any other perspective, but you know what I mean. You play as Mr. Compound, and it's your job to shoot bad guys. Yeah, it's not really about the plot, if you couldn't tell. Playing neither game I'm about to make a comparison to, but this game is like Hotline Miami mixed with Cruelty Squad. We start out in this dingy-ass apartment with nothing to do except drink an extortionate amount of alcohol. You can decide which difficulty you want based off which food you eat, which I thought was pretty clever, and go to the shooting range to try out different guns. I don't know know why he has this in his apartment, but go off. Let's hop into the first level and I'll explain what's going on. The sewers. So our main objective is just to kill all of the enemies on a floor and then use the elevator to move up to the next one, repeat for literally every level in this game. It isn't winning the Academy Award for varied objectives, like we're not going on an egg delivery quest at any point, but the one objective that is here is really solid. On the walls in the starting area, and pretty much littered throughout the entire game, you can find emergency guns, which will be your starting pistol. I love the pool of guns and the shooting mechanics in this game so much, oh my god. I'll just use the shotgun to demonstrate my point. You can fire it off 2 shells before you'll have to reload it. Now you can't just hit the A button and bullets magically move into your gun. You need to physically open it, grab 2 shells, and put it in the gun. Then either hit A again to close it, or if you're cool, flick it back upwards. It's so much nuance to simply reloading that I haven't seen done in any other game. It 100% has been done in other games, but I haven't seen it, so it doesn't count. Or how about the grenade launcher, how you need to flop it open, then put the bombshell in there. This game made the act of reloading fun. That is a statement for the century. Now how about the guns when they aren't out of ammo? Well, I like all of the ones I've gotten to try out thus far. There are some that you can use one-handed, like the pistol, which has an auto reload since it goes off magic or something. Then the majority of other ones require 2 hands, like the sniper rifle or shotgun. Well, they don't technically require 2 hands, but if you want to reload it, you're gonna have to drop the one in your left hand. Or drop the one in your right hand if you're a left-handed freak. Some guns are better with 2 hands, like the sniper rifle or shotgun. All this game needs is the PS3 move gun, and I think it's without a flaw. I think putting 2 hands on one gun works, but it's easy to lose immersion when your other hand is just flailing all over the place. Especially with guns like the SMG, how they're really close together. It just doesn't work that well for me. I'll stick with the recoil breaking my wrist, thanks. On top of the weapons, I love the physics too. Like bouncing a grenade off a wall to go around corners so it can blow people up. Maybe there's too many people in an area, so you pop around the corner to blow up an explosive barrel. What about how your character really doesn't have a torso, so ducking or physically jumping over bullets is completely valid? Or how about the fact that anything that's a 3D model can probably be picked up? If you find yourself getting hit too much, why not just pick up one of the people that you knocked down and use them as a body shield? The game never tells you or explains how to do this, I just figured it out by bumming around and it was so cool. Now enough about the shooting, how about the things you're shooting? All of the enemies I thought were really cool, and also like how clearly most of them are Doom inspired. You have the grunts, then there are these guys with the machine guns, then you have flying enemies, this giant mecha spider thing. Really, all of them could have been replaced with Doom enemies and I would have not noticed. There are drones that fly around sporadically but are one shot, and they change up the enemies for every level too. So the second level, which I think is some kind of office, there are cleaning robots that are mobile versions of those explosive barrels. There are little robots that'll try to hop onto you, these dudes that roll around with turrets on their heads, and later on there are these sniper drones, these walking ones, security camera guns. None of the enemies annoyed me, which is really impressive for a boomer shooter. All of them felt super unique and I liked them all. Since we're on the second area now, let's talk about the world that we're in because I really like it. All of the different areas felt really good to go through. I especially like this final area where you go through an office building. The visuals are just a treat to look at, and since you can't look away, that's a good thing. These chunky ass pixels and low polygonal enemies make it very easy to distinguish when something is something you should shoot at. On the topic of the world we're in, even though there isn't a ton of it, I think the writing is really funny. Like there are signs on the walls that are advertising the most blatant scams ever. Buy 1 for the price of 2. Don't think, just buy. I don't think this is a dystopian future. I think we're just inside Apple headquarters. Speaking of apples, if you accidentally blow yourself up like an idiot, enemies can sometimes drop food to let you heal. I'm not going anywhere at this, I just forgot to bring it up. Overall, if you like first-person shooters or you need a reason to justify the purchase of a $300 headset, then I think this can justify. It just feels good to play, man. The shooting feels great, all of the different guns feel like a blast to use, pun intended. The comedy is surprisingly good, like there's this guy in the sewers you can find on a poster. I would like to imagine this is the developer of the game, but it would be way funnier if this is just some random dude. Like, why is he here? It overall is just a really good experience. This is where I would put my complaints, but I don't really have any. This isn't really a roguelite, I guess, but we kind of already broke that rule with the last 2. It is by a technicality, I guess, since you can unlock new guns for the next one, including upgraded pistols you can find in walls. You know what, I'll justify this being a roguelite. The house you spawn in, there's a vending machine with syringes in it, and depending on which one you jab into, you will change how the game plays. How about that? The only drawback I would say is the price. It's $20, which is more expensive than the last 3 games put together, but I would say it's worth it. I can't really think of any complaints, and if I think of some, I'll put it right here. I thought of some. So there are bosses you can find on some floors, like this guy with a jetpack, this dude with a shield, but really none of them except the final boss, which I will not show because it was f***ing awesome. None of them really just stood out at all. Like, you could defeat most of them in a few shots. They were kind of just there. Really, the price is the only drawback, and it's cheaper than Shovel-Knight Dig at least. Oh hey, you should totally check out the last video I made before this one. It's super cool, and I'm definitely not desperate for people to watch it because of how it did in the algorithm. On that same note, you should subscribe. But if you want more VR roguelite action, then I say we head off to my favorite roguelite I found while making this video, Underdogs. Your name is Manface, and this is your best friend, Hole Guy, and you're both off to who knows where to beat the shit out of robots. You two need to help out your brother or something by getting into this giant dome that literally has f*** off written all over it. But to get into there, you're gonna have to do some mech fighting. And luckily, we brought this cool-ass gorilla suit. Look, it's a roguelite. Are you really here for story? It's just an excuse to get you in the monkey. And since we're in said monkey, let's talk about how the suit controls. It's a VR game like the last one, so it's quite simple. You use your left arm to punch and your right arm to punch. How imaginative. No, the real complexity comes from how you punch. Physically swinging your body and arms to wind up will make you deal more damage. So it's like you're actually punching robotic dogs. It's great. Or if you hold the bottom trigger on one of them, you can move yourself around. The legs don't work because of how giant the robot is, so you need to physically move yourself using your arms. Now, all of that is very interesting, but if you hold both of your arms to the ground, then swing your arms behind you, you can do a dash, ramming forward into stuff. That's really it for how you control your body, but I think it works extremely well. I mean, how much in terms of depth are you really expecting from the controls of a VR game? You are the controller, that's the gimmick. But now that we're done with that tutorial, it's time to enter the kill box. This is where you'll be doing those fights and controlling the gorilla. Here, you're placed into a ring where you'll fight a variety of robots. These little walker guys, dogs, and later into the first area, these bigger versions of those dogs that can go turbo. You can't smash it while it's blue or it'll latch onto you, taking a bunch of your health, so you'll need to maneuver around it while enemies keep spawning. This is where the game's entire strategy comes from. Do I avoid this and attack other enemies while it's chasing me? Are there enemies behind me that I can't see because I'm looking forward? What is going on is a question that gets asked and answered every 2 seconds in this game. How you can work around this is, hey, there's a spinning thingy over there. What if I smack a robot into it? And you're rewarded for that thought process because that absolutely does more damage. Or, what if I smack a robot into another robot? That works too. Or, what if I throw one of these grenade robots at that turbo dog from earlier? Do you get what I'm saying? This game rewards outside the box thinking constantly. It's something that happened to me after I finished scripting this when I was editing and playing this game. I was doing the first boss of the game and my dome, which is like where the character is, got really damaged. And if your dome cracks, you're one shot. So obviously, really bad. Then I had the idea, hey, what if I put my left arm up in front of my face to shield hits? And that f***ing worked. The game never tells you can block stuff with your arms. I just found that out. It was awesome. I love video games and saying the F word. Despite what you might think from the concept of swinging farther in real life to deal more damage, there is a lot more brain power that goes into it. Now, you don't just put thought into what you're doing when you're in the ring. What about when you're out of it? Every time you win in the ring, the day progresses and you get to go do whatever you want. We have the morning, noon, and evenings to kill. Basically, you have 3 turns and you can go do one of 2 things on each of them. Go looking for trouble or go to a shop. Now, it isn't obviously the same thing every time. Different things happen whenever you choose these options, and sometimes those paths won't even be available to you. But no matter what, you need to choose one. There is no skipping. Sometimes when you go into a shop, it could be a mechanic store, some guy coming to sell you things, or a bunch of random stuff. You can choose to upgrade your chassis, your RAM, or a bunch of different stuff for your arms, even replacing them for other things like this claw that can pick up and throw enemies. Alternatively, you could upgrade them with add-ons. Usually just strict upgrades like more damage or more health. Now, looking for trouble brings up way more opportunities for funny stuff to happen, but most of them coming with a risk. You can go rummaging around the junkyard for upgrades and add-ons, but you can also risk getting caught by scavengers for more rewards. You can get some unexpected drunk dude to fix your mech for whatever health it lost, but the more he repairs, the higher chance he has of screwing up and damaging it more than he was fixing. Or you can let some random dude who really does not look well mentally upgrade your add-ons, but the more he does it, the more eager he gets and the higher chance he has of downgrading them. It's really fun with all the random bullshit that can happen for no reason. And sometimes stuff is just out of your control, like finding a suitcase from a fan that gives you a free add-on or upgrade, which is pretty cool. Or getting bugged for no reason. Now, after your day is finished, you get to go back to the kill box, but before you can, you get to choose a sponsor. Well, the game calls them Patreons, but I don't have one of those set up to make an easy joke, so I'm gonna say sponsor. They'll give you a reward after your fight, but as long as you play by some wacky condition within the ring. Like the enemies going turbo randomly, or the entire stadium being dark, which is just great for showing off this game in a video format. After a bunch of days, you get to fight a boss, which in our case is this dude with big sword hands. Don't bring the grabber onto this fight. Honestly, I can make an entire video about this game, and I just might, but I'm going to stop talking about it here because I want you to go out and play it. Think out of all of the games I talked about today, I'll put this one at the top, Brotato at number 2, Compound number 3, Metavaxx, then Window Kill. But I would still recommend all of them. Go out and play all of these. I would heavily recommend all of them if you can. The only complaints I can think about with Underdogs is I have yet again the price point. I know the price of VR games is typically higher than others. That's just because it takes a lot more manpower since you have to account for literally everything, but $30 for this might turn some people off. Do you know how many Whoppers you could buy for that money? The gorilla feels good to control. I love how gritty everything looks. The writing is really good, which is something I didn't bring up. I love how immersive it is. And my god, man, the music is just top notch. This game gets a whole 4 out of 5 Whopper jokes. One day I might come back to this and make a whole video out of it, but for right now, that's all the time we got today. I hope I made you interested in at least one of these roguelites because I would recommend all of them. Especially Underdogs, man, that one was awesome. I have no idea how to end videos, so hit button, do things, right words, goodbye.